My name is Jennifer Rycenga. I am a retired professor from San Jose State University and the author of a new book on Prudence Crandall and the Canterbury Academy entitled Schooling the Nation. And I am so delighted to be at my favorite archive in the country, the American Antiquarian Society here in Worcester, where I have spent many a happy hour researching for my book in the primary sources that the Antiquarian Society has so carefully guarded over the decades and now centuries. Schooling the Nation as a book is taking the angle of understanding that Prudence Crandall didn't start her school alone. She was prompted to do so by two young African-American women. One was her household helper, Mariah Davis. The other was the first student to be admitted who was African-American, that being Sarah Harris. And the two black women, Mariah and Sarah, really gauged Crandall very carefully. And we know this through Crandall's own testimony over the years, as well as what the students said later on. The story has been told often. Prudence Crandall is, in fact, the state heroine of Connecticut. But what was missed in the story was the success of the academy. It did function for a year and a half before a combination of vigilante and legal violence against it closed the school. But in that year and a half, real learning took place, and therefore we have a base of alumna who we can track what happened to them later in life and what happened to their offspring, their children, their impact, the organizations they were involved with, and so on. And I took that as my burden in this book to tell a fuller story of the academy. To do that, I have to really look at what was the learning happening in the school. And it was there that the primary materials that a place like the American Antiquarian Society has became so invaluable to me. I brought today, or asked for, two of the most important. One is a newspaper that was her opponent, the Windham County Advertiser, which, like many of the white newspapers of that day, tried to pretend that they were charitable towards African Americans, but in fact supported colonization, which was the idea that free blacks should be repatriated to a place they'd never been, namely the west coast of Africa, which is about as ridiculous as repatriating me to the Netherlands, where I have never been. And so this newspaper was hostile to African American education because they saw it as giving African Americans a reason to remain in the United States. However, they were the only press in town locally, close to Canterbury. The other nearby papers in Norwich, New Haven, and New London were no less friendly to what was happening with this new school. And so the abolitionists decided that they needed their own press. And they started a newspaper called The Unionist, which was edited by Charles Burleigh, who was one of the sons of Rinaldo Burleigh, who ran the Plainfield Academy. And it was the American Antiquarian Society that held most of the annual reports of the Plainfield Academy that enabled me to piece together the white community and who was on which side. So that was very interesting. But this newspaper, The Unionist, was the best way for the students and the supporters of the school to see what was happening in the wider world. This issue, which is unique in the world, you hold the only copy of it, was from September of 1833. It contains a trial transcript because a law had been passed against Crandall. And so this trial transcript is very important, but it was also published, luckily, in the Connecticut Post. But this issue is more valuable to me because in it, Charles Burleigh, who was a white man, published a letter to the editor from an African-American man, who starts by quoting the poetry of Cowper on the equality of all people, regardless of skin color, and then proceeds to speak philosophically about what is wrong with the way the students are being treated. And so the students are reading about their own struggle right here in this newspaper. And it is only because of resources like this that I can state unequivocally that the students were reading African American men's writings as they were coming out in reaction to what the students themselves were doing. So this is a most valuable piece of showing the interracial component of what was happening at that school, showing us how white women, black women, white men, and black men could all be working together for a common cause. I feel this is a very important message for us to have now. The school was constantly subjected to violence, and yet they persisted and ultimately succeeded. I was able to put together enough research to show that many of these students did go on to very fine lives as activists and teachers themselves, and so did their progeny. Don't want to give away too much because I want you to come and hear the talk. But there are some wonderful surprises all over the history of sports, jazz, education, nursing, community health, and helping the freedmen at the end of the Civil War.